This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, emerging market shares took a backseat today. Investors rushed to exit risky assets and embrace the safe havens. And that's as weak business readings from the world's top economies raise fears of a worsening global slowdown. On the continent, South Africa's JSE saw its all-shares slip over 1% on gloomy global data. There, of course, is also little in terms of scheduled corporate releases, though some focus may be on the ANC, which, of course, is scheduled to announce plans to stimulate South Africa's economy later today. Now, also coming up on the show, the Central Bank of Kenya flags 900 accounts with suspicious deposits. Boris Johnson outlines new measures for UK's exit from the EU. And this invention is helping doctors quickly diagnose pneumonia. Well, let's kick off the show in Kenya following Monday's deadline of the demonetization of the old generation shilling 1,000 notes. The Central Bank of Kenya has flagged about 900 accounts where suspicious deposits have been made. Now, the accounts have been put under investigation by the Reserve Bank following the withdrawal of those old notes. Well, let's discuss this further with George Bodo. He is the director at Call Street Kenya, and he joins us right now in the studio. Great to have you on the show, Mr. Bodo. Yeah. Well, let's start by looking at those figures. 7 billion shillings of the 217 billion in circulation as at June 1st did not return to the system. So, do you agree with the CBK governor that the process was a success, especially when we look at its aim to curb illicit financial flows and, of course, to curb counterfeiting in the country?
Thank you. I think the process was not a success in my assessment. It actually left more questions to be answered. The central bank gave certain statistics, actually. One is that they say that they had actually received about 209 million, which is in value terms about 209 billion. So that 209 million were of the old series currencies. In exchange, they've issued about 149.6, just about 150 million notes. Now, if you understand the demonetization process is if I have 100 units of currency in circulation, I want to issue new generation currency units. What I need to do is I need to ask the 100 people holding those old currency units to bring them back. And in exchange, I give them a similar amount, 100 unit currencies. Mm-hmm. Now, you have a situation where the central bank, in exchange for the 209 million old series currency notes that they received back, they issued 149 point something, which is 150 million. That leaves a bit of some hole there, which we don't know. Officially, they said the hole is about 7 billion, 7.4 million notes that didn't come back. But actually, the hole is much larger. And the second issue is that if you look at the nature of those transactions, the central bank said that 92% of those transactions were under 2 million shillings. Under 2 million shillings. That means that the myth that some people were hoarding large sums of cash in their houses has been disproven. Yes.
Well, we'll get further. Well, let's start with that, with the fact that this was meant to help curb corruption in the country. Yeah. As we mentioned earlier, 900 accounts have been flagged by the CBK for making suspicious deposits. So give me your take. What do you expect to happen after this exercise in terms of, curbing corruption in the country, and in terms of repercussions for those who are found corrupt, and how do you think it will impact the economy?
I just don't think that demonetization helps curb corruption. I think they made us believe that they are going to achieve this objective. I don't think that objective will be achieved. And we didn't see it suddenly from this exercise. And I say that for the simple reason that the people that we say are corrupt are actually way much smarter than we think in terms of what assets they hold. From this exercise, we've seen that they don't hold billions of shillings in their houses. In actual sense, they hold other asset classes other than holding money in their accounts. Right. So I don't think that objective of weeding out illicit financial flows, corruption, I don't think it's going to be met. The exercise are not met at that objective. Yeah.
Now, you alluded a little bit to this, but there were some warnings that this process could cause hyperinflation. In fact, at some point, we did see the shilling weaken to 104 against the dollar. Do you agree with the views that the shilling faced some threats in this demonetization
No,
process?
I don't agree, because if you think about demonetization as a zero-sum game. So you have some units, you want to bring it back, bring it back, I give you an equivalent unit. I'm not creating a new unit out of that exercise.
Right.
Basically, it's a zero-sum game. I'm giving you back, so you're giving me back and I'm giving me 1 unit for 1 unit. So you're not creating any new currency. So I don't see any impact in terms of consumer price stability being destabilized out of this. Neither did I see any impact of demonetization on the foreign exchange market. Yeah.
So then going forward, what real impact do you think it had on the economy? And I just want to throw in the fact that the exercise was also meant to boost financial inclusion of the informal sector and also help the country transition to a more cashless economy. What impact then do you think it's going to have in the economy? Has the process moved that the needle significantly when it comes to financial inclusion as well?
No, I don't think it has. I think when you talk about financial inclusion, we need to talk about other initiatives away from demonetization. Demonetization is a very simple exercise meant to achieve a very simple objective. And in this case, actually, we need to remember that the exercise is actually largely to comply with the constitution that gave out new specifications, actually, of how a currency note should look like. So it's largely a compliance with the law. And they added what I call an addendum by creating that deadline of September 30th to ostensibly fight illicit flows and corruption, an objective which I think has not been met.
Well, very quickly, what's your worry then about that gap that you saw between the figures?
The worry is that, one major worry is that they need to explain to us, but my major worry is that it actually means that CBK might have previously overstated the amount of money in circulation, and consequently, that has an impact on monetary policy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us in the studio. Thank you for your insights. Of course, that was Mr. George Bodo. He's the director at Call Street, Kenya. Well, let's move on now to Zimbabwe. The country's central bank has banned mobile money cash out and cashback services. It has also banned quoting in foreign currencies as part of its latest measures to clamp down on illegal currency trading. CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya has those details.
In Zimbabwe, it's hard to find cash in the bank, but it's readily available on the streets, where some mobile money agents have been selling it for a fee. Premiums of up to 65 cents on every dollar were being charged to swap banknotes for electronic funds. That thriving but inflationary trade is what monetary authorities are seeking to halt by banning the mobile money services.
They need to be closed down because they don't do any work, yet they want a bigger share of my money, which I sweat for.
On Tuesday, several agents didn't open, uncertain about how to proceed, leaving their clients in limbo.
We are in need of money and
we are in need of money and we need the money. What determines the percentage are the market forces of demand and supply. So we negotiate a rate that's acceptable to both buyer and seller. No one is forced to trade.
Zimbabwe's central bank has rolled out a number of currency reforms, including banning the use of and quoting for goods and services in foreign currency as it tries to rein in parallel market trade. Not everyone is convinced that this latest measure will provide a lasting solution to the long-running currency crisis, and that's because they say it's addressing symptoms and not the root cause.
We're too much dependent on imports as an economy. So there's a high demand for foreign exchange by everyone, whether it's in the informal sector or in the business sector. And in order for these people to access this foreign exchange, they need cash in their hands so they can go and buy this forex, right? So removing eco cash does not resolve the fundamental issues of this economy. It's a temporary measure. So people will use alternative means.
Econet Wireless, which dominates the mobile money market with over 10 million registered users, filed an urgent High Court application on Tuesday to have the ban lifted, arguing that it's indiscriminate and will affect millions of innocent subscribers. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
And now a quick look at our corporate headlines today. South Africa's largest gold miner, Harmony Gold, has refinanced and increased its existing loan and revolving credit facility to $400 million from $350 million. Now, lead arranger Absa Bank Limited said the addition reflected the confidence of participating banks in Harmony's credit quality, its mining assets, and strength of its balance sheet. Now, the gold miner intends to use these funds to expand its existing operations in South Africa, Papua New Guinea, and the rest of Africa. Meanwhile, Malaysian oil and gas company Petroleum Nasional, otherwise known as Petronas, and its South African partners plan to conduct an initial public offering in their fuel retailer Engen in 2020. The IPO intends to fund the upgrade of a refinery in Durban that needs to meet more stringent laws aimed at curbing pollution. JP Morgan Chase has been mandated to assist Petronas with the listing. And Ethiopian Airlines operating revenue jumped by 28.6% in the year to July 31st. This comes months after one of the airline's Boeing planes crashed a few minutes after takeoff from Addis Ababa. The rise has been attributed by a surge in passenger numbers. The airline CEO, Tewolde Gebremariam, last month told state television that passenger numbers had risen by 14%. And U.S. healthcare giant Johnson & Johnson has reached a $20.4 million settlement to avoid a much-anticipated trial in Ohio for allegedly fueling the opioid addiction crisis. Now, the settlement resolves all of the county's claims with no admission of liability, and removes the company from the federal trial. This comes after an Oklahoma judge ordered the healthcare giant to pay $572 million in damages for its role in fostering opioid addiction in August. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's head into a quick break now, still to come on the show. Mining industry leaders discuss the sector's dragged growth in South Africa. And we explore Ethiopia's plan to rapidly boost its economy and create more jobs.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business. Only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
Beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra Naidoo. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Welcome back to Global Business Africa. Now let's head to Tunisia, where the finance minister has announced the country's budget projections for the year 2020. Government expenditure is expected to rise to $16.4 billion. The economy, on its part, will expand by 3%. Well, CGTN's Adnan Shaushi has more on those details.
The finance minister, Ida Shalghoum, says he aims at reducing the budget deficit that stood at 6.1% in 2016 and 2017, 4.8% in 2018, and is currently at 3.9% in 2019.
We seek to further lower the state budget deficit to 3% in 2020. This will help us decrease the indebtedness rate, which dropped 2 points in 2019, and provide additional resources.
The minister added that the decrease in the budget deficit could be explained by the 17% increase in resources, taxes paid by Tunisian citizens, as well as efforts made by debt collection services.
There's an unavoidable need for fiscal consolidation and for seeking new resources. It is impossible to continue working with an indebtedness rate exceeding 70%. The state must diversify its resources.
The Minister of Investment declared that the government is committed to reducing the budget deficit, boosting the level of investment, particularly in infrastructure and development, and increasing the budgetary financing rate from the state's own resources.
The Tunisian government's restructuring plan is underway. The new budget will favor the creation of infrastructure, investment and other economic projects to create jobs and revive the economy.
According to the state budget for 2019, the amount of civil service salaries is equivalent to 14.1% of GDP, against 14% discounted in 2018. Economists are calling for a better control of the public sector wage bill. The Ministers of Finance and Investment laid emphasis on the need to speed up economic restructuring. Authorities plan to increase the number of tax control agents to boost tax revenues next year. Adnan Shaushi, CGTN, Tunis.
And mining industry leaders gathered in Johannesburg to talk about a sector under pressure despite upwardly trending commodity prices. Its contribution to the country's economic growth has deteriorated over time. While CGTN's Angela Coppola reports from a mining sector conference underway in Johannesburg.
The gold sector is under pressure due to increased costs, and coal is feeling increased pressure for different reasons, that of climate change.
We will have to move away from the labour-intensive industry that we have to a more technology-intensive industry, and then we will have to rebrand the industry as well, because it's a global issue around mining, but in South Africa we have a lot of additional challenges.
It's not all bad news though. The local mining industry is changing, slowly adapting to global imperatives.
We have got pockets of excellence, pockets of industry-leading technologies and people. And the question is, how do we build off that platform that's being established to help the whole industry move forward together? The reality today is that the future of mining will need to be very different if it's to be genuinely sustainable as a business prospect in any country.
One of the key challenges facing the South African mining sector is the constant drive to modernise, automate and digitise operations and reduce unit costs.
And I think that presents a bit of a challenge, because the kind of people we need to employ going forward are going to be different to the ones we have today. And that presents two challenges. The first is, where do you get those people from? And where are they now in the pipeline of the education system?
Mining is an intrusive business, especially if the communities are nearby the operations. Some companies are taking a holistic approach to mining to ensure that the community benefits from investment.
Because from our point of view, having a community that's engaged and wanting you to be there must make a material impact on your costs. And if you ask Chris about the impact of blockades and other things from time to time, yet generally not about a mining issue, there's a 10 to 20% difference in our operating costs that can be achieved. And the question is, how do you put some of that back into the community? Because that's where the gaps are.
There are lots of challenges facing the mining industry across the continent, but specifically in South Africa, especially with the depth of those gold mines, and they're coming to end of life right now. So it's about the workforce and what they're going to be doing, because our unemployment numbers are skyrocketing at the moment. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, a few weeks back, Ethiopia unveiled a new economic growth plan, which is known as the Homegrown Economic Reform Agenda. It was aimed at unlocking the country's development potential, as well as addressing its macroeconomic imbalances, which, of course, it has faced for some time now. But is this new plan going to work? Well, CGTN's Girum Chala tells us more.
It is dubbed Homegrown Economic Reform. The plan seeks to use the agriculture, manufacturing, mining, ICT and tourism sectors as a muscle to see a rapid double-digit economic growth and create 2 million jobs every year all the way to 2030.
Even in the context of political instability and continued protests, the economy continued to grow. To grow in certain parts, but not in all parts of all sectors of the economy. So the economy has a number of problems that it needs to address, particularly unemployment. So at this point in time, the economy did need some reform. The reform that should have focused on two things: increase efficiency, and then make sure that there is a stopgap measure to create unemployment, to reduce unemployment and create employment for the restless youth.
Ethiopia plans to grow from GDP per capita of 865 to 2,219 US dollars. And already the homegrown economic reform agenda is facing criticism. It has been described as too ambitious considering the high level of inflation.
2,200 from 800 in 3 years, and in 10 years. It's an ambitious program. It's a necessary program. But in a country that has that level of inflation, in a country that has a debt burden of 60% of debt to GDP ratio, it's going to be difficult. Is it going to be homegrown if you're continuing to strengthen the economy on the basis of external assistance?
The new plan will tap the private sector to take over the state enterprise that dominate the economy.
This one looks like it's a philosophical shift from state capitalism to the private sector. Whether at this point in time Ethiopia really needs that kind of radical shift is another question. There is too much shift in economic philosophy or the general approach to economic reform. I think the Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, when he presented his idea of developmental state, putting it between the night watchman or the liberal economy and the predatory state, identifying that the developmental state is what is good for Ethiopia, what's appropriate at that time for Ethiopia, where the private sector is really small, that the rent distribution should be done by the state for the benefit of many. Regardless of what you might say, it was a well thought out program. Whether we needed to shift away from that, from the what is known as the Beijing consensus to the language of Washington consensus or IMF prescribed program, especially supported in this country by the US. There is some question in my mind that raises suspicion, that is that there is a 3-year program that the United States Embassy had put in place, and this is also a 3-year program for implementation.
The UN Economic Commission for Africa says Ethiopia currently has a $10 billion gap, $6 billion in new investments, and another $4 billion of annual debt reduction. That must be bridged in order to achieve its reform aspirations. There's also a concern that the economy of this Eastern Africa country could fall into debt stress in the next 2 years. Group Data CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Now, in an effort to fight climate change, the Central African Forest Initiative announced that Gabon will be paid about $150 million in international funds to preserve its rainforests. Now, through the initiative, Norway will support Gabon with the funds to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to battle deforestation. CGTN's Alexandria Majala reports that the excitement is not the same for people living near the forests.
The Akande National Park is one of the many forest jewels that Gabon is fighting to conserve. But those living in poverty in the shadow of the park see the forests less as a global treasure to be cosseted and more as a resource that they need to use to survive.
Our pride is also having a piece of land, to be able to house your children, your family. The forest is there, but pride is also there, to have a plot of land and a house to protect your family.
Gabon's forests are a source of national pride. Recently, Norway announced a $150 million contract with Gabon to reduce its carbon emissions. The initiative comes under the Central African Forest Initiative, a UN-launched scheme aimed at encouraging Western help for cash-strapped forest custodians. Under the 10-year deal signed on September 22nd, Gabon, which is still almost 90% covered in forest, will become the first African country to be paid for reducing greenhouse gas emissions to fight climate change. Norway will pay Gabon $10 for every ton of carbon not emitted, relative to the Central African country's annual average of between 2005 to 2014 and up to a maximum payout of $150 million over 10 years. But the fight against climate change has spurred little enthusiasm among local people.
We are a little disappointed because they say that it is the parks, it is the forest.
Loggers and miners too argue that the trees and the mineral-rich land below it deserve to be used, a position fiercely opposed by green campaigners. Faced with these competing pressures, the government has to perform a tightrope act.
Once a place is classified, you don't exploit the wood there. You don't clear the forest to plant. You don't hunt. You don't sell land. You do the opposite.
Recently, after a scandal erupted over a huge, illegally logged haul of kevazingo, a rare tropical hardwood, the government seized stalks of the wood. But in an olive branch to loggers, the government says that the expensive wood prized by furniture makers would be auctioned, after which they hope to reauthorize legal logging of kevazingo as early as next year or in 2021. Measures to deal with illegal logging have been boosted by the Gabonese Agency for Space Studies and Observation, which since 2015 has been linked up with the satellites of several other agencies with eyes on the forest. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Meanwhile, Egypt's Ministry of Tourism has reached out to social media bloggers and influencers as a new form of marketing the country to the world. Tourism is a major source of foreign exchange to the North African nation. The country attracted 14 million visitors in the 2018 and 2019 season. Well, here's Yasser Hakim with more on that.
Social media has become a powerful source of information, and Egypt's Ministry of Tourism wanted to exploit this medium as its main marketing tool. The campaign is called People to People.
It has a vision to create a sustainable tourism sector by strengthening Egypt's competitiveness through structural reforms that are in line with international standards. One of these structural reforms has to do with marketing and promotion. And as we know today, when we look at international trends of travel, what attracts tourists most is what they see on social media. Everyone makes their decision of what they're going to buy, where they're going to go, with what they see on their phone. So being present in a very effective way, in a contemporary way, in ways that deliver the message around our campaign. Our campaign is based on people to people, as we see here.
Famous bloggers, also known as influencers, were invited on a tour to Egypt. and they posted their experiences to millions of their followers.
This is my 9th time here in Egypt, and it's always a pleasure to stay here. I have discovered another part of Egypt, Cairo, Alexandria, and El Alamein, and was amazing, like always. It's very important this kind of events and this kind of tour, because Italian people love Egypt and to come in Egypt. But it's nice to see and discover the better part of your land, of your country.
I think that's a really good way to show a place to stay, because when you see common ads for places to stay, it's not that personal. But when you can follow someone like an influencer you follow on a trip, you get like organic posts from everything they do. It's more like coming with a friend on a trip.
Their posts would naturally create a positive feedback.
I first came to Egypt about 2 years ago, and my videos here were very successful. I really loved the country, and I have had so many people write to me and say, you convinced me to go to Egypt, and your videos made me want to come here, which is really inspiring to me, but just to know that I inspired people to come, because I love Egypt, so.
This is a new marketing approach by the tourism sector in Egypt, aside from the conventional media campaigns.
Having international influencers who come to the country, go to different destinations, tell the story in their own way, explain their own story, is the best way to attract more visitors to the country.
Statistics show that tourist inflow to Egypt has increased by 35% year-on-year in 2018-2019. And officials hope social media campaigns will help push that number even further in the coming years. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, you're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break now. Still to come. Boris Johnson outlines new measures for UK's exit from the EU. And Germany's finance minister downplays fears of a looming recession.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed.
And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
I'm Uche Okoronkwo reporting from Nairobi's city center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are these stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in. See, business in Africa After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Past, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN. Let's recap today's top headlines. 25 Malian soldiers have been killed, while 60 others are missing after suspected jihadists attacked 2 army camps in central Mali. In response, the army has launched a joint operation with forces from neighboring Burkina Faso, backed up by French troops stationed in the region. And South Africa has hosted the 9th session of the Binational Commission with Nigeria. The discussions are part of a commitment by South Africa and Nigeria to effectively structure bilateral relations. And participants drawn from across South Sudan have held talks to promote peace and encourage inclusion in the country. The 3-day forum also underscored the need for national and sub-national parties to own the peace process set in motion by a September 2018 Addis Ababa agreement. And that's a recap of today's top headlines. Now, on the international front, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has outlined new ideas regarding the Brexit deal during the Conservative Party conference in Manchester. Now, Johnson's proposal includes plans to remove the so-called backstop, or the contested insurance policy for the Irish border that, of course, Britain previously signed. Johnson also said that there's no point in leaving the EU if the country stays in an EU customs union. Now, Downing Street said earlier today in a statement that Johnson would submit the final Brexit proposals to Brussels today. The office also said that if the EU, quote, does not engage, Johnson would have no other choice but to keep to his threat of leaving the bloc on October 31st without a deal.
We will, under no circumstances, have checks at or near the border in Northern Ireland. We will respect the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement. And by a process of renewable democratic consent by the Executive and the Assembly of Northern Ireland, we will go further and protect the existing regulatory arrangements for farmers and businesses on both sides of the border. And at the same time, we will allow the UK, whole and entire, to withdraw from the EU with control over our own trade policy from the start.
Well, let's head to Germany now, where Finance Minister Olaf Scholz says on Wednesday that Europe's largest economy could counter a recession if there were one. Now, Scholz said that Germany is only seeing slower growth at the moment, not a crisis. He also said that he did not expect a downturn as bad as the one 10 years ago. The finance minister said that his country will be able to counter a recession if the worst-case scenario were to happen. Now, many economists expect the German economy to fall into recession in the third quarter after contraction seen in the second quarter of this year. Reuters cited sources that said Germany's leading economic institutes are expected to lower their growth forecasts for this year and next later on Wednesday. Well, let's shift our focus now to the Middle East, where Dubai is hosting its second ever China Film Week. The annual event aims to showcase Chinese cinema to UAE audiences. It's all set up by Hala China, which is an organization created in 2018 to boost cultural links. Here's CGTN's Jacob Greaves with more from Dubai.
Dubai is again rolling out the red carpet for China. This time it's film stars.
Events like this place firmly in the spotlight the growing bilateral ties between China and the UAE, and in particular the growing efforts by the likes of Dubai to court both Chinese visitors and business.
Some top Chinese talent has been in attendance. For Dubai Film and TV Commission, that means potential to try and bring more Chinese productions to UAE soil.
So far, we have attracted many Chinese films that has been shot in Dubai, and this is an ongoing thing. The relationship has been established by Dubai Film and TV Commission in the past years. Jackie Chan has been one of our favorite, I would say, actor and celebrity who has shot here twice, and we're working with him in future films. And also we have a couple of Chinese directors who have already established this relationship with Dubai's film market.
This opening night saw the screening of new movie Chinese Captain. Significantly, on the same day it was shown in China for the first time. Chinese cinema goers are a growing market, last year taking the title of the world's largest.
I
think it's a good thing to see the box office is rising. It shows that people need movies and people love movies. So we need the movie industry. I think it also shows that the movie industry is booming and developing, and Chinese movies are gaining recognition in the world.
Acclaimed director Chen Jinbin has also been in attendance. He thinks common ground can be found in cinema.
During the time of watching a movie, a play, or reading literature, we can all find out that people are faced with common problems. We are all working hard to overcome difficulties and fight for a better life.
Finding common ground also makes some financial sense for Dubai. The Emirates government claims the first half of 2019 saw an 11% year-on-year boost to visitors from China. The UAE's recent pivot towards more Chinese investment is also taking shape on the big screen. Jacob Greaves-Sichen in Dubai.
And heading to Singapore now, the country's Changi airport often tops the list of the world's best transportation hubs. It not only boasts world-class facilities, but it's also home to eye-catching greenery, as well as impressive floral installations. Now, its newest addition, Jewel Changi, is a nature-themed structure, which is designed to be a destination in itself. CGTN's Mirolu has more.
As you enter Jewel Changi, you feel that you're in a misty rainforest and not a regular airport complex. Truly a sight to behold, the Jewel boasts of lush greens, exotic flowers, and the tallest indoor waterfall in the world. As Han Jin, the Chief Executive Officer of Jewel Changi Development, explains, the idea is to make Jewel much more than an airport transit hub.
We want to be a lifestyle destination. We want to have different facets of offerings that you cannot find in one single place. And our vision has always been to bring the nature from outdoors, indoors, so that no matter what time of day you're visiting, under all weather conditions, you can enjoy the lush greenery and have a relaxing time in Jewel.
The centerpiece of Jewel is the Forest Valley and its 40-meter-high waterfall, the Rain Vortex. Inspired by the frequent rainfall in Singapore, rainwater is funneled into the waterfall and recycled into the irrigation system. Surrounding the waterfall is a 4-story forest featuring over 900 trees, along with walking trails, cascading waterfalls, and natural light coming through Jewel's glass roof. A true representation of the city in a garden vision, the Jewel Changi is a gateway to what Singapore has to offer. In the middle of an airport complex, you have a Canopy Park that brings nature to travelers and local visitors. Canopy Park is the latest offering to open at Jewel. The 14,000 square meter area includes play attractions located in the midst of seasonal flowers, topiary animals, and unique trees.
There are more than 2,000 trees in the whole of Jewel, and all these trees are bought from all around the world. When they arrive in Singapore, we actually pre-grow them in the nursery for some time so that they get acclimatized after their long journey here. And then we grow them in Jewel, and they have to then be acclimatized within Jewel for about 6 months.
Greenery aside, the draw offers a range of facilities like early check-in and a mix of retail shops, restaurants, and even a movie theater. People often see airports as just a place of transit. Draw Changi is attempting to change that. And looking at the crowds and the interest that it has generated, it seems Draw is becoming the preferred destination for travelers. Miro Lu, CGTN, Singapore.
Well, let's move on now and take a look at how commodities performed today. Gold prices inching up as investors rush to find safety in the precious metal. That, of course, is after dismal, weak business readings from the world's top economies fanned fears of a sharp global economic slowdown and, of course, stoked fears of further interest rate cuts going forward. Well, oil prices mixed today. Brent crude extending losses due to depressed global stock markets, but we did see U.S. crude rising slightly after industry data showed a surprise drop in inventories in the U.S. Well, let's take a quick break now. Still to come. We'll bring you a new invention that's helping doctors diagnose pneumonia faster.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Canopy, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Of course, here's our second installment of our Social Startup Africa series. We look at how a biomedical smart jacket is helping doctors quickly diagnose pneumonia. Brian Turiabagia is a Ugandan engineer and a co-inventor of the biomedical smart jacket. According to the WHO, in Sub-Saharan Africa, pneumonia kills 500,000 children. Now, the disease is an acute respiratory infection affecting the lungs and can be caused by viruses, bacteria, or fungi.
Pneumonia, a leading cause of death among children under 5 years of age, causing roughly 1 million deaths every year worldwide. According to the WHO, only in sub-Saharan Africa, this severe lung infection kills 500,000 children under the age of 5. However, pneumonia deaths could be averted if caretakers recognize the symptoms and danger signs promptly. This forgotten killer of children kills 24,000 Ugandan kids under the age of 5 every year, many of whom are misdiagnosed as having malaria.
When the children have a fever or feel unwell, most parents think about malaria. And then it is after that they found there's no evidence of malaria that eventually they think of other causes. So by that time, the children are quite sick when they are brought here.
We came to Kampala, where a team of Ugandan engineers has invented a smart e-jacket that diagnoses pneumonia faster than a doctor.
I am Brian Chiawaje, and I'm the Chief Data Scientist with Mama Op Medicals. That is a startup that is working on biomedical smart jacket to diagnose pneumonia in children aged below 5 years. Within my mind, I always wanted to do something that was unique, something that would end up being special. Because I would look around my life and I realized things were not moving at a pace which I thought they should be moving. And me being in engineering, I thought of if I grew up in that kind of career, I could set up like some of the next leading technologies within the country or even the world at large. One of my friends called Olivia, who happens to be part of the Mama Op, who is the CEO of the Mama Op Medicals, had a grandmother who had died of pneumonia. And the whole reason is that she had been taken across several clinics, several hospitals, which were not offering the best attention. Until her death, that's when the prognosis reports indicated that she had died of pneumonia. And the challenge there was, why had she been taken across all these clinics, all these hospitals, but they couldn't find out the disease? So that's when we thought of using the same kind of experience we had before, whereby we wanted to put our engineering knowledge into work. We saw it as a challenge that we could try to innovate around, and we sat down together and brainstormed on several things, and that's how we came up with the idea of making up the jacket. And surprisingly enough, we found that actually many more kids, many more children are the ones who die because of pneumonia, simply because they have less immunity and they can easily be killed by any foreign disease which kills very fast. So we had to look for a quicker solution to put it to an end. And that's how we came up with the whole entire design of having a jacket that can diagnose pneumonia faster than what the doctors in the rural health settings can do. This jacket, it helps health workers and doctors in quickly diagnosing pneumonia. And how it does that, it looks out for the vital signs, for the critical signs of the pneumonia disease from a child. All the person has to do, what the doctor has to do is to get this jacket, tie it around the child's body, and then click the sensor which ignites the process of recording the information from the child's body. Within just a period of 1 minute, this jacket is able to pick out the vital signs such as the respiratory rate. It's able to sense whether the child has any abnormal lung patterns, and after that it sends a final result on a screen before a doctor or health worker. So that way they're able to easily determine whether the child is having pneumonia or not. So it kind of easily makes their work very easy, and they go on with the rest of the work. They're able to treat the child, they're able to either refer them to another nearby hospital for quick attention.
Most cases, the diagnosis of pneumonia in this country is a clinical one, but I think it requires to be confirmed with a chest X-ray. So depending on what time or where you are, because most people live in rural areas, and the rural areas may not have ready access to just radiographs. And even if they did, the people who are there to interpret the radiographs are not that many. So what we think is will be reliable if we can rely on that technology that helps people to diagnose pneumonia without need of moving to a district hospital, then get the history done, then get it interpreted. I think that will really help us to save those lives.
Africa's currencies today. South Africa's rand weakening for the 6th consecutive session. Of course, investors are shying away from riskier assets amid uncertainty globally. This has weighed on other emerging market currencies today. Now, locally in South Africa, focus has shifted to the ANC's plans to boost its economy. We also saw the rand weakening further after ABSA's Purchasing Managers Index fell to a decade low in September. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.